The Galactic Council chamber was alive with noise. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy shouted over one another. The shining walls of the chamber were meant to reflect unity, but on this day, they echoed only division. The subject was Earth, humanity. Some voices rang with anger, others with fear. The Syrians, tall and scaled, spoke first. Their leader raised his head proudly. Humans are reckless. They rise too quickly, take too much, and bow to no one. They threaten balance. They must be contained before they spread further. The Thaurians, long rivals of the Syrians, usually argued against them. But this time, they agreed. Their delegate leaned back, his sharp eyes glinting with arrogance. Humans are too emotional. They cannot be trusted with the Council's future. They look weak, but they are ambitious. If we wait, they will rise above us all. The answer is simple. Strike now. Other voices joined. Some called for caution, reminding the Chamber of humanity's role in mediating disputes and opening trade. But those voices were drowned out by the louder ones, the angrier ones. The debate stretched for hours. Each accusation grew sharper. Each warning was brushed aside. The chamber was a storm of pride and fear, with no room for reason. At last, the Speaker of the Council struck the chamber's gong. The sound silenced the voices. A final decision was to be made. The motion was simple: invade Earth. One by one, the votes were cast. The Syrians voted yes. The Thaurians voted yes. The Vethari hesitated but followed, unwilling to seem weak. Slowly, the count rose. Too many had chosen to ignore reason. Too many believed humanity could be broken before it became truly strong. And then, silence. The vote passed. The chamber erupted again, but this time with celebration from those who thought victory was already theirs. The Syrian delegate smirked, declaring boldly, "Earth will crumble in days." The Thaurians laughed openly. They are soft. They are dreamers. They are not ready for real war. But not everyone celebrated. A handful of species sat quietly, unease in their eyes. They had watched humans for years, seen the way they fought not only with weapons, but with will. They remembered how humans had endured disasters and still rebuilt, stronger than before. But their voices had been ignored. At the far end of the chamber, Ambassador Jonathan Hale remained seated. His face was unreadable, calm yet firm. On either side of him stood Emma Clark and David Mercer. The three humans had not shouted during the debate. They had not begged. They had only listened. When the gong sounded, Jonathan rose. The chamber grew quieter. His presence carried a weight that silence alone could not. He did not shout. His voice was steady, almost gentle, but each word carried power. You think Earth is soft. You think we are unprepared. You believe we will bend, that we will fall. He paused, letting the words sink into the chamber's silence. His eyes moved across the delegates, resting on the Syrians, then the Thaurians. You will learn how wrong you are. With that, Jonathan bowed his head slightly. He turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Emma followed with quiet grace, her calm expression hiding the storm beneath. David walked with slow, deliberate steps, his gaze fixed on the delegates as if memorizing their faces. No one moved to stop them. The heavy doors closed behind the humans, their footsteps fading into the distance. For a moment, the chamber was utterly still. Then the laughter began. First from the Syrians, sharp and cruel. Then from the Thaurians, mocking and loud. The Vethari chuckled nervously, following the crowd. Soon the chamber rang with laughter at the humans' calm warning. But beneath the noise, unease lingered. Some delegates could not shake the memory of Jonathan's voice, so calm yet so certain. Others remembered humanity's history, how they had endured famines, wars, and storms that would have broken other species. Humanity had survived by standing together, by fighting with everything they had when threatened. And though the chamber laughed, the thought remained in the shadows of their minds. Perhaps Earth would not be as easy to break as the Syrians claimed. Jonathan's words echoed long after he left. You think Earth is soft. You'll learn how wrong you are. The laughter covered the sound, but the silence that followed clung to the walls of the chamber like a ghost. The decision had been made. The invasion of Earth was coming. And in that moment, a future of fire and fear began to take shape, though none of them, not even the proud Syrians or the smirking Thaurians, truly understood what they had just unleashed. The fleets came like shadows across the stars. From the windows of their ships, alien captains looked down at the blue and green world of Earth. To them, it looked fragile, soft, and unprepared. They had been told humans were diplomats, traders, and explorers, but never warriors. The Syrians had promised the council this invasion would be simple. The Thalrians had boasted that resistance would last no more than a day. The first wave descended with confidence. Their ships spread out across the upper orbit, casting dark silhouettes against the curve of the planet. Thousands of soldiers prepared for landing, their voices filled with arrogance. Some joked about how quickly the humans would surrender. Others argued over who would claim the richest cities. They expected fear, begging, and silence. But Earth did not stay silent. The moment the fleets entered the atmosphere, hidden defenses came alive. Satellites that had long looked harmless shifted in orbit, revealing weapons concealed for decades. The skies lit up with flashes as railguns fired, each round tearing through alien shields like paper. Missile silos on the ground opened, releasing storms of fire into the heavens. Alien commanders shouted orders, but they were already too late. The first ships that had entered Earth's skies were ripped apart in seconds. Explosions lit up the darkness, burning like new stars above the world. Soldiers who had laughed hours earlier now screamed as their transports shattered into pieces. From the ground, human pilots rose to meet the invaders. Fighter jets streaked upward, weaving through debris, their movements sharp and precise. They did not fight with fear. They fought with a cold focus, every strike calculated, every maneuver practiced. One alien captain stared at the burning wreckage of his fleet and felt a deep dread he had never known before. They had been promised an easy victory. Instead, they were facing hunters who had been preparing for this moment in silence. In the skies above Earth, battles raged. Alien ships tried to push forward, to break through the defensive wall. But every time they advanced, a railgun answered. Every time they regrouped, missiles found them. Human pilots cut through their formations, striking hard, then vanishing into the clouds before retaliation could come. The first alien wave had expected to land troops in the great cities, London, New York, Tokyo, Sydney. Instead, they never made it past orbit. One by one, ships exploded into flames. Transports fell like broken stars, their trails of fire stretching across the sky. The humans below watched but did not cheer. There was no celebration. Only grim silence. This was not sport. This was survival. On the alien flagships, confusion turned to panic. Orders became desperate, broken, and contradictory. Some commanders demanded they press forward, shouting that the humans could not hold forever. Others screamed for retreat, their voices breaking as they watched ship after ship vanish from their scanners. In the end, instinct won. The survivors turned and fled. Their once proud fleets limped away from Earth, broken and burning. Some ships were barely held together. Others were silent, their crews lost. The invasion that was promised to be easy had ended in disaster before a single alien soldier touched the ground. From orbit, Earth still stood. Unbowed. Unbroken. On the surface, Jonathan Hale watched the skies from a secure command post. Emma Clark stood at his side, her arms folded, her eyes cold. David Mercer was silent, his jaw tight as he studied the battle reports. Jonathan spoke softly, his words for them alone. They thought Earth would bow. Now they know better. Emma gave a small nod, her voice steady but sharp. This was only their first wave. They will come again. David finally spoke, his tone low but filled with certainty. And we will be ready. Far above, the retreating alien fleets carried their wounded pride back to the council. The soldiers who survived whispered to one another, their confidence shattered. They had been told Earth was soft, yet Earth had met them with fire and steel. Fear spread faster than their ships. The Syrians, who had promised victory, now looked pale and shaken. The Thalrians, who had mocked humanity, now muttered excuses. And across the chamber of the Galactic Council, those who had voted for invasion began to feel the first true weight of doubt. The galaxy had laughed when Jonathan Hale gave his warning. But now the laughter was gone. Ships burned in the skies above Earth, their wreckage drifting silently into space. Survivors looked back at the world with dread. They had come expecting surrender. Instead, they had been reminded of a truth they had ignored. Humans did not surrender. Not when their homes were threatened. Not when their children were in danger. Not ever. The first wave had failed. And the galaxy, once so certain of victory, now faced the one thing it had not expected from Earth, resistance. True resistance. The kind that did not break. The kind that would only grow stronger. The skies above Earth still glowed with the wreckage of ships, but beneath those skies, humanity stood ready. The world had been tested, and it had not fallen. The invaders had left shaken, their laughter gone, replaced with fear. And for the first time, The galaxy began to wonder if Jonathan Hale's warning had not been a threat at all, but a promise. Humanity did not wait. The invasion had come, and the first wave had fallen. To most species, that would have been enough, to repel, to rebuild, to wait in fear for the next strike. But humans were not like most species. Jonathan Hale had given his warning in the council chamber, his calm voice carrying a promise few had understood. Now, that promise began to unfold. The fleets launched. They were not massive warships like those of the Thaurians or endless swarms like the Syrians. Human ships were smaller, lighter, and faster. Their hulls were painted dark to vanish against the void. Their engines burned cold, designed to hide their trails. Each one carried weapons built not for display but for precision. They did not move as one giant armada. Instead, they scattered like hunters across the stars. The first strikes came in Syrian space. A fleet preparing for a second assault found its fuel depots destroyed overnight. Supply stations that had been guarded for decades went silent. Commanders woke to find their communications black, their fleets cut off. Panic spread through their ranks before a single human appeared. Then the humans came. Fast ships dropped from the dark, their weapons flashing in sharp bursts. They did not waste fire. Every shot found its mark. Enemy shields cracked. Enemy hulls tore open. Human ships vanished into the void before reinforcements arrived. The Syrians called for help, sending desperate signals to the council. But no one answered. Allies who had once laughed with them now stayed quiet. The galaxy had begun to understand, this was not defense. This was a hunt. Every strike was part of a list. Jonathan Hale's orders were not spoken loudly, but they were carried with precision. Emma Clark and David Mercer stood at his side, reading reports in quiet rooms lit by holographic stars. Every target was chosen with care. A supply line here, a command post there, a fleet staging ground in another corner of space. The humans did not aim for cities. They did not target civilians. Their strikes were sharper, colder, more focused. Only those who had touched the invasion, only those who had fueled it, faced the storm. One alien governor, who had boasted in the council chamber that Earth would fall in days, vanished. His ship was found weeks later, drifting, its crew gone. Another commander, who had ordered the first attack on the colony, was cornered in his own fortress. Human ships surrounded him before a shot was fired. He surrendered without a fight. Fear grew faster than fire. The Syrians tried to regroup. They built fleets twice as large, surrounding their capitals with walls of steel. But the humans never attacked the capitals. Instead, they struck deeper, cutting off the fuel, the food, the trade. Fleets that had once seemed unbreakable starved in silence, trapped in their own systems. The Thaurians, who had smirked in the chamber, began to whisper. Their leaders told themselves it was not their war, that the humans would only punish the Syrians. But their fleets had supplied weapons for the invasion. Their commanders had signed the orders. And soon, their outposts also began to fall silent. A Thaurian shipyard, once filled with bright lights, was found abandoned. Every ship under construction had been destroyed before completion. No one saw the humans come. No one saw them leave. The Thaurians sent ships to investigate, but none returned. The vet Harry, who had dismissed the humans with mocking waves, watched uneasily. Their long trade lines stretched across the stars, but they too had lent ships to the invasion. Human hunters began to move through their outer routes. Traders whispered of ships that appeared without warning, striking, then vanishing into shadow. It was not war in the way the galaxy knew war. It was not fleets against fleets. It was not planets burning. It was not endless battles of numbers and pride. It was something colder. Something sharper. It was a hunt. Alien commanders met in secret chambers, their voices filled with fear. Some said the humans would stop once their debt was paid. Others argued that humanity would never stop, that the hunt would continue until every name, every fleet, every leader tied to the invasion was erased. And still, the attacks came. Outposts went dark. Fleets scattered. Leaders vanished in the night. Reports reached the council, and the chamber grew heavy with silence. Where once there had been laughter, now there were whispers. Where once there had been arrogance, now there was dread. Jonathan Hale never raised his voice. He did not need to. Emma Clark stood beside him, calm as stone. David Mercer's silence was louder than speeches. Together, they guided the storm, each move measured, each strike deliberate. The galaxy looked to them with fear, yet also with a strange respect. The humans had not lashed out blindly. They had not sought to destroy everything. They had chosen their targets with discipline, with purpose. And that discipline was more terrifying than rage. For rage could burn out. But purpose endured. In the shadows of space, human ships continued their work. Every strike carried the same message: you struck at Earth. You thought us weak. Now you learn who we are. The Syrians, once so proud, now whispered in desperation. The Thaurians, once so smug, now spoke with regret. The Vethari, once so dismissive, now lowered their eyes when human names were spoken. The galaxy had thought the humans soft. They had thought Earth unprepared. They had thought the invasion would be simple. But now they knew the truth. The humans were not defending. The humans were not negotiating. The humans were hunting. And they would not stop. Not until the list was complete. Not until the debt was paid. The council chamber had once been a place of noise. Voices had clashed, laughter had filled the air, and arrogance had ruled every debate. But now, it was silent. The great hall was crowded, yet no one dared to raise their voice. Delegates who had once shouted now whispered only to themselves. Others stared at the floor, unwilling to meet the eyes of their neighbors. Fear had settled into every corner like a shadow. Reports had been coming in for weeks. Messages carried across the galaxy told the same story again and again: fleets destroyed, outposts abandoned, leaders captured or vanished. The council chamber, once filled with endless speeches, now filled with lists of losses. The Syrians sat with pale faces, their confidence shattered. They had been the first to declare Earth weak, the first to call for invasion. Now their fleets were scattered, their outposts silent. Every new report cut deeper into their pride, leaving only dread. The Thaurians, who had once smirked at every warning, no longer looked amused. Their smug expressions were gone, replaced by tight jaws and darting eyes. Their leaders had vanished, their shipyards destroyed, their fleets chased from the stars. Their smirks had turned into fear. Even the Vethari, who had once waved dismissively at human words, now sat in silence. Their long trade lines had been cut, their merchants too afraid to leave port. They lowered their eyes whenever human names were spoken, as if even saying the word Earth was dangerous. Every delegate in the chamber had once believed humanity soft. They had laughed at Jonathan Hale's warning, mocking his calm tone. They had thought Earth weak, a prey world waiting to be consumed. But now, they whispered of something different. Earth was not prey. Earth was a hunter. The silence grew heavier when the doors opened. Two figures entered, Emma Clark and David Mercer. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their presence alone carried weight. Delegates who had once mocked them now looked away in shame, their laughter long forgotten. Emma's calm eyes swept across the chamber, and the whispers died. David's steady steps echoed like thunder in the silence. And then, Jonathan Hale entered. He walked with calm purpose, every step measured. He carried no weapon, yet the entire chamber seemed to shrink in his presence. He did not rush. He did not look left or right. He simply moved to the center of the hall and stopped. The room held its breath. Jonathan looked at them, the Syrians pale and trembling, the Thaurians stripped of arrogance, the Vethari lowered in shame. He looked at every delegate who had once laughed at him, who had once dismissed Earth as harmless. His voice was calm when he spoke. You thought Earth was prey. You've learned we are hunters. The words hung in the air like stone. No delegate dared to reply. No one laughed this time. Not even the boldest among them. The silence was heavier than war. 4 days, the council had struggled to find words. They had argued in small corners, whispering of peace, of surrender, of hope. But Jonathan's words ended those whispers. There was no argument left. There was no denial. The reports had already proven the truth. Outposts erased. Fleets scattered. Commanders gone. Human fleets moved like ghosts, striking only where they chose, leaving behind only silence and fear. The delegates had all seen the pattern, and they all knew what it meant. Humanity was not simply fighting back. Humanity was hunting. One Syrian delegate tried to raise his voice, but it cracked before the first word. His trembling hands fell back to the table, and he said nothing more. A Thaurian leaned forward as if to protest, but his lips never opened. Even the Vethari, who had once been quick to mock, only stared at the ground. No one dared. Because deep in their hearts, every delegate knew the truth. The humans had not unleashed chaos. They had unleashed precision. They had chosen their enemies carefully. And they would not stop until the debt was paid in full. The chamber that had once mocked humanity now sat frozen in fear of them. Emma stood like a quiet shadow beside Jonathan, her gaze steady and unyielding. David remained firm at his other side, silent but solid as stone. They did not need speeches or threats. Their presence alone was enough. The silence lasted long after Jonathan's words faded. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. It was as if the entire galaxy waited for what he would say next. But Jonathan said nothing more. He had spoken his truth, and it was enough. For the council, that silence was worse than any threat. They had expected fury. They had expected shouts and demands. They had expected humanity to fight as prey fights, desperate, loud, chaotic. But instead, the humans had fought with discipline, with patience, with cold purpose. That purpose was more terrifying than anger. Because anger could burn out. But purpose endured. As the chamber sat frozen, delegates began to understand what they had truly unleashed. They had not awakened prey. They had awakened predators who remembered every insult, every strike, every name tied to the invasion. The Syrians shifted in their seats, unable to meet Jonathan's eyes. The Thaurians clenched their jaws, trapped between pride and fear. The Vethari lowered their heads, wishing they had never dismissed the humans with mocking waves. Jonathan did not linger. He did not argue. He did not explain. He did not promise. He had spoken. That was enough. Slowly, he turned and walked toward the doors. Emma and David followed, their calm steps echoing in the chamber. Not a single delegate dared to speak as they left. Not one voice rose in protest. When the doors closed behind them, the silence remained. Delegates shifted uneasily, their whispers small and weak. None of them spoke of victory now. None of them spoke of power. They spoke only of fear, fear of what would come next, fear of when the humans would strike again, fear of whether their names were on the list. The council, once so proud, now sat broken. They had thought themselves rulers of the galaxy. They had thought Earth nothing more than a small world, easy to invade, easy to control. But they had been wrong. And now, the fear had set in. It would not leave. The invasion was over. The fleets that had once flown with arrogance now drifted in silence, broken and scattered. Wrecks of alien ships burned in the void, their glowing trails marking the final end of their pride. The invaders had come with confidence, believing Earth would fall within days. Instead, they had surrendered in fear, their weapons abandoned, their leaders humbled. On Earth, the skies were clear once more. Families who had hidden in shelters stepped out into the open. Soldiers who had stood ready with grim resolve now lowered their weapons, their faces tired but proud. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had not even been weakened. Humanity had risen, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. Word spread faster than any fleet could travel. Traders whispered it from port to port. Messengers carried it across the stars. The council itself could not silence the news, no matter how much some delegates wished to hide it. The story was the same in every corner of space. Earth had been invaded. The invaders had failed. And the price of failure had been written in fire. Merchants began avoiding human borders, not from hostility, but from respect and fear. Trade ships steered wide around Earth's territory, whispering that even to cross too close was dangerous. Smugglers who once thought humans easy prey now dared not set a course anywhere near their routes. Leaders across the stars gathered in private chambers, their voices hushed. They warned their people not to provoke Earth, not even by accident. Treaties were respected with sudden care. Patrols gave human ships wide space. Every captain, every commander, every soldier now understood something that had once seemed impossible. Humanity was not to be tested. Even Earth's oldest rivals, species that had once challenged them at every step, looked at humans with new eyes. They no longer spoke of Earth as weak or emotional. They no longer mocked the humans for their passion or their pride. Instead, they spoke with caution, with respect, and beneath that respect, with fear. In the council chamber, silence reigned. The same hall that had once shaken with laughter and arrogance was now filled only with quiet. The delegates sat heavy in their seats, their faces pale, their voices hushed. They remembered too clearly the day they had mocked Jonathan Hale's warning. They remembered the way they had laughed when he walked away in silence. And now, they remembered how wrong they had been. Jonathan returned only once. He stood in the chamber, Emma Clark and David Mercer at his side, and he did not shout or gloat. He did not raise his voice. He spoke calmly, his tone steady, his words simple. Humanity asked for peace. Humanity was mocked. Humanity was attacked. Now you understand the price. No one answered him. No one dared. Emma's eyes swept across the chamber, and every delegate who met her gaze quickly looked away. David stood silent, a wall of calm strength, his presence as heavy as the silence itself. Jonathan did not stay long. He did not need to. His words had already carved themselves into the chamber's walls. His warning had already been proven. His calm voice was enough to remind them all of what had happened, and of what could happen again, if they ever forgot. After he left, the council remained quiet for hours. Not a single delegate raised their voice in argument. Not one dared to laugh. Even whispers were rare, and those whispers carried only fear. The lesson was clear. It was not written in words, though Jonathan had spoken them. It was written in the burning wrecks of fleets, in the silence of outposts, in the sudden caution of leaders across the galaxy. It was written in fire, in precision, in the quiet discipline of a people who had been underestimated too many times. To invade Earth is not just foolish, one delegate whispered finally, his voice shaking. It is suicide. Others nodded, too afraid to disagree. Too afraid to even speak. From that day on, the council carried the memory of Earth's answer. It was passed quietly from one generation to the next. Never provoke Earth. Never underestimate humanity. Never strike at their home. For humanity had shown the truth. They were not soft. They were not prey. They were hunters. And to threaten their survival was to call down a storm that no fleet, no empire, no council could withstand. The lesson would not be forgotten. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had spoken, not with words, not with endless speeches, but with action. And their action had carved a warning into the stars themselves. Earth will stand. Earth will endure. And Earth will finish what others begin.